The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio. From hot dogs to cool kitties, this is Darkside of the Pooch.
Oh, Dr. Rab, what you got, baby? Oh, yeah, that's good. This is Darkside of the Pooch. You hear it every single Monday through Friday, 7 o'clock Central Time. We're actually getting more listeners on our podcast, which is fine. I don't care. You can listen to it live right here on Tony Kurre Radio, TKR, the TKR app, which is downloaded tens of thousands of times. Greatly appreciated by being part of that. Or go to Tony Kurre Radio Podcast. You can Google it or just go to your favorite podcast and pull up Dark Side of the Pooch. And Dr. Rab joins us every single week. We missed last week, so we are backed up. We have a lot of things to get into. And we also have tons of email, info@tonykurreradio.net, info@tonykurreradio.net. You can check out Dark Side of the Pooch's mainstay, the ground central, if you will, or ground zero. That's the Rossbridge Animal Hospital, at Rossbridge Vet on Twitter, Rossbridge Animal Hospital on Facebook. You doing good, by the way?
Yeah, man, I'm doing great. I missed last week's show, but
all right.
I'm excited because the Braves are in the playoffs.
There you
go. At the time of this recording, the Braves are still in,
yes,
and the Mets are not.
And that's a good thing, right? Yeah, I saw what the Pods did. Of course, they're having to check the pitcher's ears. Did you see that? Were they checking his ears last night to make sure that he wasn't throwing any weird pitches to the Mets? Did you see that?
I saw that. I thought that was hilarious. I saw a really funny thing on Twitter where it showed somebody like taking a quarter out of his ear.
I love it. All right, I hate to start serious, and we've had this discussion probably 4 or 5 times on Dark Side of the Pooch about pit bulls, but it happened again. There's a 9-year-old Houston kid who's recovering after being bitten several times by his pit bull. That happened last week. And in Shelby County, Tennessee, tragic mauling a couple nights ago, deaths of a baby and a toddler has reignited the debate on whether pit bulls should be kept as pets. The pit bulls' names Cheech and Mia were euthanized the next day. They were family pets. New data published in August reveals 628 kids were admitted to Sydney's Children's Hospital with dog-related injuries. Over the last 10 years, the average patient's age was just 5 years old, and the pit bull was the most common attacker, making up 10.3% cases, followed by Labradors and Rottweilers. And now people are coming out of the woodwork saying, how could you possibly leave your toddler and your 5-month-old around a breed like a pit bull? Some people are saying no dog is completely trustworthy around children, no matter what the breed. As much as I love my 2 sweet French bulldogs, I still don't trust them or leave them alone with my grandchildren. You just never knew. Another person saying always blaming the breed, but never the owner. What about all the heroic ones that have saved their owners and human siblings? What about the ones that have been raised with love and not violence? Another one says, please don't start breed of dog hating. Something is seriously wrong here. Former U.S. President Barack Obama even said, we don't support breed-specific legislation when he was asked whether they should have some type of legal ramification on Rottweilers and pit bulls. Research shows that bans on certain types of dogs are largely ineffective and often a waste of public resources. You're a veterinarian. You treat all these dogs. What's your thoughts, first of all, on the pit bull breed, and why does it seem like it always comes up? Is this the sinkhole mentality? Do we just hear more about pit bulls than any other dog because they're pit bulls?
I'm not sure about that. I guess it's possible. I think that anytime, if you take the breed out of it, if someone comes into our office and says, our dog bit our kid, whether, especially a young kid, and the kid either didn't really do anything intentionally to provoke the dog or did nothing at all, there was no provocation whatsoever. Or, maybe it's a 6-month-old that's crawling around and just doesn't know yet to leave the dog alone. Mm-hmm. If the dog bites in that case, then I always recommend you got to find a solution for the dog outside the house.
Yeah.
And whether that's getting into a foster home or rehoming the dog, or heaven forbid you have to euthanize it. But you just can't take that chance once it happens one time. I have a hard time saying that just because it's a pit bull, it needs to, be euthanized, or people don't need to have pit bulls anymore, because I've seen a lot of sweet pit bulls. I've seen a lot of mean Shih Tzus.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of mean Chihuahuas. So, and I hear people call our office, not often, but it happens, where a child gets bitten by a dog at home, and it's it's not a pit bull,
Yeah.
it's other breeds.
Yeah.
So, I have without knowing the ins and outs of these cases, I have a hard time saying, we have to get rid of all the pit bulls because, in this, there's history of animals being, killed out of fear, when that's not something that should have happened. And then you end up almost eradicating an entire species of animal,
Yeah.
for something that could have been avoided. So, I'm not on the train of, pit bulls should all be, either euthanized or should never be, considered pets again.
And these were family pets. The owner, who is a 30-year-old mother, she was also attacked while she tried to get the dogs off. And my heart goes out to her. I can imagine losing two children that way. So what is the best mode of operation when you have a newborn or a toddler in a family with a dog? Do you just keep them away from the dog at all cost? Do you make sure you're with them when they're around? Because I've seen my kids used to ride our Labrador. I mean, they would get around. They would eat its dog food while I was eating it. Never bit. It never did anything. But I know there's different, and it depends on whether you have more than one dog. I would tend to believe, and I'm not a veterinarian, I'm not a scientist here, but I would tend to believe that if you had two pit bulls, if you only had one pit bull, I doubt there's an attack, because, I've got three dogs, or I had three dogs, and they almost ripped apart my Havanese. And it was because they were fighting over a bone. And normally it's food centered. Maybe it's uncomfortable. Maybe the dog's not feeling well. But what's the best thing to do if you have newborns or toddlers around a family pet, a pet that's very loving?
I think that you have to, in this case, the dog has to prove that it's trustworthy, number one, and the dog may have had a track record that deserved, the dog being trusted, but when and in no way would I ever blame, in this situation, I wouldn't blame the parent for this happening. This is one of those situations where I don't know where the fault lies, but if this is a family dog that they've had for a long time, I mean, it's terrible, but accidents happen. I mean, you hear of kids getting by a pool,
Yeah.
and they fall in, and that's not the parent's fault. And I have a hard time saying this is a parent's fault too. But you do have to. I've heard enough of these stories where I know that you cannot leave a crawling baby crawling through the house with dogs and it not being monitored. You just can't. You have to treat that dog like it's a hole in the floor, or it's a cabinet that doesn't have child lock on it, or it's a stairwell that doesn't have a gate around it. I mean, that's what a dog is.
Yeah.
I mean, in one way or another, it's an accident waiting to happen. So, I would just tell everybody out there to, you have to treat the dog like it's a hazard, like there is any other hazard in the house. A cabinet full of cleaning agents isn't a bad thing, unless a baby gets in it. And it's the same way with a dog. A dog isn't a bad thing unless the baby gets in it and causes, the dog to be afraid. But then the other thing is, the herd and the pack mentality is a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
And, I talk about Twitter a lot, but there was a few weeks ago, there was a really interesting video in Brazil of a restaurant, and there were people sitting outside, and there was it was a race. I mean, it was people running a race, but it wasn't during the day. And these people sitting outside the restaurant saw these people running, and you can see the camera. It's like it's a security camera,
Mm-hmm.
and these people start looking at each other, and they don't understand why everyone is running. And then before you know it, everyone that is sitting outside the restaurant has gotten up, very chaotically, and started running with the runners because they think there's something wrong, and they haven't stopped to think about why are these people running. They just think that there's some kind of terrorist threat or some type of danger or whatever.
Yeah.
And dogs are like that too. Dogs get worked up into a frenzy, and it makes them act in a way that they may not act otherwise. I've heard of dogs that have lived their whole lives together and in total harmony and no problems. And then all of a sudden, like a wild animal runs into the backyard and one dog tries to catch it.
Mm-hmm.
But then the other dog, there's just a switch that flips and the other dog will attack the dog that's trying to get the wild animal.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the craziest thing. And you just never truly know how a dog is going to act. You just don't. You never truly know.
All right, let's get into some emails here, some mutt mail, info@TonyCurryRadio.net, info@TonyCurryRadio.net. We always welcome your emails, so we'll get some great questions. We got a couple of great ones here today. Darkside the Pooch, you can hear every Monday through Friday, 7 p.m. Central, right here on the TKR app, Tony Curry Radio, and also wherever you get your podcast. We got hundreds of episodes. You go back and listen to as many as you want. Check it out with Dr. Rab Stewart here from the Rossbridge Animal Hospital, Rossbridge Vet on Twitter, the Rossbridge Animal Hospital on Facebook. All right. Todd in Bloomington, Indiana said, is it true you must discipline a dog immediately within 10 seconds? And if you can't discipline a dog immediately, what's the best way to discipline your dog after a period of time? I'll use poop in the hallway, for example. If your dog gets caught pooping in the hallway, that's like a win because you can pick him up while he's going and no, take him outside and hopefully he learns. But how soon do you need to discipline a dog after he does something wrong?
It needs to be immediate because they're not gonna associate whatever punishment you have, with whatever action that was done. So it's got to be, very, very short after the behavior that what was done that you want to not be done anymore. So there's not really any way to discipline them if it's not pretty much immediate.
Now we, back in the day, we used to, push their noses in it, right? Will they know it's their poop if you do that? Like an hour later, maybe you're out and you come back and you show them that they pooped on the floor. Would that discipline work or no?
I wouldn't rely on it. I wouldn't rely on it. My history of doing that has proven to be fruitless. So
yeah, I hear you.
I'm going based on my own personal experience.
All right. Frank in Birmingham says, once a dog is mated with another dog, does it always know that it is mated with that dog? Is there a love affair between dogs that have mated at one point or time and another?
I don't think that there's a love affair. I think that it's just purely, instinct. Now, I mean, instinct can turn into a brief love affair. And, if you have dogs that have mated before, I think that they're going to mate again. But I don't think that there's like a, monogamous type of, single partner.
But do they remember though? Do they remember that they had pups like my Havanese and my little poodle there had pups? When they see each other, do they remember each other that they hooked up or no?
I don't know. I don't know. And I don't know if there's a way to figure that out.
Yeah. If one is in heat and the other one is ready to go, will dogs just automatically mate, or are there some dogs that are like, I don't want to have anything to do with this? Depending on
it depends on the behavior of the dog. Yeah. The male dog. It depends. Well, and the female for that matter. But most of the time when the female's ovulating and she knows that it's time, she's going to be receptive of most any male dog that's behaving himself, but if you have, and this goes for, I'm sure, lots of different species of animals, it definitely is true for horses. If you have an intact male and they're not behaving themselves, then it's going to be a no-go from that female. Yeah. But if their behavior is good, then most time they'll be receptive.
We should all be like penguins. They're monogamous, right? They find one mate and they mate their entire life. I know. I love that. We got a great flea story we're going to get into here in just a second, but another email here, info@TonyCurryRadio.net, Darkside the Pooch with Dr. Rab Stewart, the Rossbridge Animal Hospital. Check him out, 208-0301. He's the best. Nikki in Portland, Oregon says, do pets really like to dress up for Halloween? And what is Dr. Rab's best Halloween costume he's ever worn?
I like that question a lot. I think there are some dogs that know that they know that something is a little bit different.
Yep.
That they may not know exactly what's going on, but the other thing that they like is the attention that goes with it. Mm-hmm. So if you have a social dog that loves attention, if you put a costume on that dog, it's going to generate more attention.
There you go.
And they're going to love that.
Yeah.
And so you're probably, I don't think it has a whole lot to do with them wearing an outfit or them knowing what the costume is or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have a social dog and they're getting all that attention, they're going to love it. And you're probably going to associate that with, oh, my dog loves this costume, when it doesn't love the costume. It loves what happens when it wears the costume. And then if you have a dog that is, maybe not as social, they're not going to like all the attention. And you may have a dog that just doesn't like the feel of the costume on it. And so in those situations, the dog is probably just going to lay down, not move around a lot. They're going to try to scratch it off or rub it off.
Yeah.
And that doesn't have anything to do with the dog not wanting to wear it because it doesn't like the look of it or just doesn't like the idea of having a costume on. It just doesn't like the way it feels.
There you go. All right.
And my favorite costume.
Yes. For you.
When I was, for me, when I was in vet school, I guess I'm the generation that I grew up watching Pee-wee's Playhouse.
Yeah.
And when he got popped for doing all his other stuff, I was like in my teens, so it was all over by then anyway. But so when I was in vet school, I wanted to go as a really obscure character from Pee-wee's Playhouse.
Yeah.
So I went as Jambi, the floating head.
Nice.
And I wore all black, and I got a box and decorated it and painted it with all these like fake jewels and stuff. And I painted my face green, and I wore a turban.
Yeah.
And so the doors of the box could open and close, and I was just the green head in there. That's my favorite costume of all time.
I mean this in the nicest way because I love you. But if you you don't need to cut your hair because it's already short. But if you just blackened your hair and put some makeup on, you could be Pee Wee Herman. you had the same body type. I mean, I'm not saying you're the same cat, and you don't ride bicycles probably. But you'd be a really tall Pee Wee Herman. You could pull that off. You know that, don't you?
Yeah. Pee Wee and I probably we probably wear the same. Our measurements are probably somewhat similar.
As long as you're not going to movie theaters together, you're fine. He's Dr. Rab Stewart, Rossbridge Hospital. Darkside the Pooch is on every single Monday through Friday, 7:00 Central. It's one of my favorite shows to do because I'm part of it, and I just love our camaraderie and our brotherhood. We get to break bread and break some pets every single week here. So Dr. Josh Claypo was out of town for the last couple weeks, and he gets home. And he's got fleas in his house. Now, Dr. Claypo hasn't had a dog in his house for a couple of years. And he believes that he's got a flea infestation in his house from the deer in his backyard. He said he's gotten close enough to deer lately. He's starting to hand feed them, and he believes that a flea jumped from a deer to him and into his home. How frequent does that happen? Is that a possibility?
Yeah, it's a possibility. And we have examples of this, somewhat often. We have, this will happen in households with no pets, obviously, because it's happened with Dr. Josh, but it will also happen in households where there are only cats and the cats never go outside. And there hasn't been any dogs that have gone into that residence, no animals in or out, just indoor cats.
Yeah.
And just randomly a flea infestation will start. And the only real explanation is that there was a flea on a person that came into the house. The flea was on the person came in the house, and the flea found the cat. And before you know it, the cats are covered in fleas. It does not take long. It's just a matter of a few weeks. So I think it's definitely plausible. That flea came from somewhere. Now, the only thing is if there's a bunch of fleas in the house, they have to be getting blood from something.
Yeah.
So, they're either on the people or there's pets somewhere that are harboring the fleas. So if you suspect a flea outbreak, the fleas aren't just hanging around in the house without having food because their food is blood.
Yeah.
So they've got to be on something.
Okay, that's interesting because it's hard to believe because you would think that if fleas got in a house and there was nobody there and no animals, that they would just split. But they don't leave, I guess, right? They lay eggs despite the fact they have nothing to eat?
Well, they're only they lay eggs. The females lay eggs after they have a blood meal.
Okay.
So in order for the female to lay eggs, they have to have eaten at some point before. So, without having anything in that house, like that's kind of a real mystery.
Yeah.
I'm not, I can see how the fleas would get in, but how they would continue to thrive in the phase of not having a food source.
Yeah.
To me, that's really interesting.
All right. Info at TonyCurryRadio.net. This is Darkside of the Pooch. David in Fort Payne has heard that dogs sometimes circle before they pee and lay down in an attempt to align with the Earth's magnetic field. Is that possible? We've talked about, sometimes dogs just like to kind of scratch a little bit and make it kind of comfy for themselves, but sometimes they circle. But have you heard anything about dogs or cats walking in circles to line up with the Earth's magnetic field?
I haven't. I'm not saying it's not true, but I have not heard that.
It sounds good.
I think that it sounds good. I feel that's like I don't know anything about this, but they're getting their like chi and their chakra in order. I don't know.
Well, but, we got animals that can smell. We got horses that, can sense thunderstorms. We had elephants that run to higher ground when there's a tsunami coming. I mean, maybe there's something there.
Yeah, and fish have that lateral line thing that helps with their, how they're floating and how they're moving in the ocean.
Yep.
So I'm not saying it's not true. I'm just saying that I haven't heard that. I might have missed that day in vet school, or maybe they don't even know.
He is Dr. Rab Stewart of the Rossbridge Animal Hospital. Their phone number is 205-208-0301. Tabitha in Birmingham saw a special on wolves. She thought it was just amazing that they marked their spots for tortorial purposes. They also mark their spots to let other wolves know to stay away. They mark their spots to let them know if they're healthy. They mark their spots to let them know if they're male or female. They mark their spots to let them know if they're in heat. Do dogs have some of those same properties, or how many of those properties? In other words, when a dog smells where a dog just peed, what can they know about that dog they're smelling?
I think a lot of the wild dogs, a lot of the stuff that they do, our domesticated dogs don't do quite as extensively. Mm-hmm. But they do mark their territory to let other dogs know that it's their stuff. And they do mark their territory if it is something that they like. So they'll pee on things that they like, but they'll also pee on things so that other dogs won't mess with that thing. So it's very territorial. And so I think that some of those traits are, they're maintained in the domesticated dogs, but some of those aren't. I don't know how much a domesticated dog will pee for other dogs to know how healthy or how sick it is. There are a lot of things that you can find in urine that do indicate disease. When we run a urinalysis, it checks if there's any glucose present, if there's any red blood cells or white blood cells, or if the pH is off, or how dilute and concentrate the urine is. So, it's definitely a thing that I could see wild dogs using to figure out if a dog is healthy or not, because I think they can pick up on that. So I can see all that stuff, but I don't think all of that, relates to domesticated dogs.
Be a dog for a minute. What exactly, when a dog sniffs or a dog is just urinated but does not urinate on top of it, in other words, it's not marking spot or to diminish that marking first, and they just can't stop. My Havanese does it all the time. He'll smell for 5 or 10 minutes if I just sit there and watch him. What do they get from that? Are they excited? What are they getting from sniff? Does it smell good? What exactly are dogs going through, or is this a dog being a dog?
Well, it's hard to know exactly what they're even smelling.
Yeah.
If they're, they could be smelling of something where a trash can was. Yeah. They could be smelling where a dog peed or pooped. They could be smelling where something died. Mm-hmm. It's just a whole, who knows what they're smelling, when they're smelling. But yeah, that's one of the, dogs don't do a lot of touching of things, with their hands. That's not really that's not a sense that they use a lot like we do. But taste, using their tongue and using their smell and using their hearing that's their primary, their primary senses, and visualization. But the touch for them is pretty much gone.
Yeah.
So they use their nose a lot and they use their mouth a lot instead of their hands. You're not gonna see us putting our nose to the ground very often, but if we see something interesting on the ground, we're gonna pick it up.
Yeah, true. Bobby in Hueytown has heard that dogs love to have or like to be stroked between the eyes, down the nose, because that's one of the areas a dog can't touch. Is that true? I mean, they can touch it, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, they do like to be touched there and scratched there. I think they could reach it, depending on how they get there. I've seen my dog. He'll kind of cross his legs and put his nose under his feet, and he can rub his nose that way. And it's a good thing I'm not on video, because I just, for some reason, I just did that myself.
We're going visual next week.
Yeah. So my dog likes that, and so it's an area that they like, but I think that they can reach it. And something else along these lines is, everyone thinks that cats like to be petted like dogs.
No,
but they don't. Cats really like to be scratched on the side of their faces, next to where their kind of lips come together, right behind that. That's where cats really like to be scratched. And if you go and pet a cat like you would normally pet a dog, like on the top of the head or the back, or especially the stomach, you're not going to get a very good response from the cat. It's either going to run away or try to fight you.
I know my cat doesn't like it. And that's perfect, because we have another question, info@TonyCurryRadio.net. Our emailers have done a great job this week. They've done some research. Cassie in Milwaukee has always wondered why cats like to headbutt. When they get up near you, they like to headbutt you a little bit. And she always felt like it was because they wanted you to pet their head. But she's heard that cats have a facial scent gland, and that when cats are headbutting you, they're actually leaving their scent on their owners. True?
Yeah, that's true. And then also, when they headbutt you like that, a lot of times they headbutt you and then they rub the side of their face on you, and that just goes back to what we said a second ago, where they really like to be pet right there on the side of their face. So the next time a cat headbutts you, notice that they turn their head so they get that rub there in that spot.
All right, Darkside the Pooch, brought to you by Ed's Pet World. We'll talk about them in a second. Our final email here, info@TonyCurryRadio.net. We have Trevor in Milwaukee as well. Says he's having some family issues. His mother and father came to visit him last week. They have 2 dogs, and they're considered part of their family, and their mom and dad don't like the dogs. And so the moms and dads said, hey, can we leave the dogs out for the week while we're here? And they had quite the tiff. He's like, no, these dogs live here. They're here 24 hours a day. They're not going to bother you. But they end up leaving 3 days early because they didn't want these dogs around all the time. What does Dr. Rab do? Is it dogs or your family? Who comes first?
Well, it's easy for me, because I just take my dog to the Rossbridge Animal Hospital in board him.
There you go.
And I actually do that pretty frequently. And mainly for me, it's just because I have a dog that is, he barks a lot and he can look aggressive. He's never bitten anybody, but he's fearful of people when they come in our house.
Yes.
So I get rid of my dog if we have people coming over. But if the dogs are well behaved, then I would have a hard time making them up into their routine just because someone didn't want to be around them. I would probably side with the dogs here and say, well, this is where the dogs live and they're nice dogs, and if you don't want to stay here, then you can find a hotel.
And now you know. Darkside the Pooch, brought to you every single week by the fine folks down there at Ed's Pet World, Seth and Angie, the entire crew. I go in there almost every single week. I love the place. All kinds of great exotic pets. They have a brand new cockatoo named Buddy down there, which is beautiful. They have caiman alligators. They got snakes. I've got my ball python down there. They have ferrets. They have all kinds of cool animals down there. And of course, Seth also collects toys. If you look from eye level down, it's animals. From eye level up, it's all toys. Unboxed stuff, Star Wars things, Battlestar Galactica stuff in the box. You want to buy, sell, or trade, you find some stuff in the attic, take it down there, they'll give you a great price. And of course, he travels the entire world looking for great toys as well. So check out Seth's Toy Closet. And of course, exotic pets, the best. Great fish too. Check them out. They have big bullfrogs, all kinds of great stuff down there. Check out Ed's Pet World, in business now for nearly 50 years in Homewood. Thank you so much, Dr. Rab. You're the man. I appreciate you.
Thanks, bud. Go Braves.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Curry Radio.